anyone would agree with that, with you.
Well, no one knows what we're talking about, so.
Well, you can set it up again and we can talk about it.
Okay, so we're talking about random people you meet, famous people you meet. We have a friend that met Adrian Grenier in Nashville.
And my friend was, how did he describe it? They were like pulled up at a stop sign, and he looked over at a car that was parked beside him and heard someone speaking. And him and his wife were like, "Oh yeah, that someone sounds familiar." They look over, and it's Adrian Grenier. If you don't know who that is, it's Vinny Chase from Entourage.
Or Adrian Grenier, if you've never heard his name pronounced.
Yeah, it's actually Grenier. But anyway, so he looked over and it was him. And sure enough, my friend Josh told me about it. I looked up Adrian Grenier's Instagram and confirmed that he was, in fact, in Nashville, which was very random and hilarious. And so the question you posed to me was, what is more random, citing Adrian Grenier in Nashville or citing Jesse Eisenberg at a Pacers game like our friend Phil did earlier in the year?
Phil from Film Beef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
now of Modern Movie Man podcast.
That's not what the name of his podcast is. Mild Mannered.
Mild Mannered Movie
Man. You said The Modern Man or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Adrian Grenier in Nashville is easily more random than Eisenberg, especially when you actually consider the context, because I think Eisenberg went to IU and he's a huge fan of the Pacers, but on any given day, Adrian Grenier, that rhymes, is more random than Jesse Eisenberg, without question.
Yeah, I just have a terrible memory, so I can't even remember like famous people that I've ran into over the course of my life. According to my grandparents, I met Muhammad Ali in a airport one time, but I guess that's not super crazy just because he's from Louisville, but I don't know. You ever met anybody famous?
The Rock.
You met The Rock?
Yeah.
I think I knew this.
At an airport. So I was coming down. I just got back from vacation. I was riding the escalator down with my dad and my sister, and down by the door, someone was causing a ruckus at the Enterprise Rent-A-Car booth, and we get down there, and my dad says, "Ryan, that's The Rock." And I luckily grew up in mid to late 90s WWF,
right?
Which was an incredible time. I think Stone Cold Steve Austin was one of the greatest fictional characters of all time. I still do to this day.
Just put the microphone closer to your mouth a little bit.
Why?
I don't know.
I'm a lot louder than you.
I'm scared.
You shouldn't be scared.
Okay. Don't be scared, homie.
So anyway, I freak out. Well, I don't remember like freaking out, but I was really, really excited, and I didn't say a word to him. But basically what was happening was The Rock was yelling at the Enterprise Rent-A-Car teller because they didn't have his either Cadillac or Mercedes ready. And I approached him with a piece of paper and a pen, and imagine, like, he's not facing me. He's facing the teller. Imagine just a little kid, half of his size, just held up a piece of paper. Dwayne Johnson did not turn his head to look at me. He grabbed the pen and paper, signed it while keeping eye contact with the teller, and handed it back to me.
It's amazing.
And I still have that autograph to this day.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
My dad used to be a bartender at the airport, so he would see famous people, especially wrestlers, that would come in. So I have several autographs of wrestlers. I have Stone Cold Steve Austin somewhere, but I don't think I've been able to keep track of it.
Do you remember Raven from the WCW?
I have Raven's autograph.
Guess where I got Raven's autograph?
The airport?
No, right here in Versailles, Kentucky. He
really?
was doing an autograph signing at Advanced Auto Parts.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was
I
hilarious.
wish you told me. I would have.
I mean, this was forever
it's
ago.
A joke.
Is he dead? I have no idea. You have to ask that question for some wrestlers.
For wrestlers, yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
But no, I actually do have his autograph. He's one of the people that I have his autograph. I used to play as Raven a lot in WCW versus NWO Revenge on N64.
I liked him because I listened to metal and he dressed.
Yeah,
like he wore
jorts with like cutoffs and stuff.
Do you remember that
Raven's Flock was the group he hung around with?
Do you remember that Diamond Dallas Page used to wear that Ghost in the Shell shirt all the time? Do you remember that?
Maybe.
No, I'm going to take that as a no. You know he has his own yoga DVDs.
Yeah, he appeared on Shark Tank.
Did he really? Shank Talk?
He took that DDP yoga to Shark Tank.
Shank Talk.
I don't know. What are you doing? What is that? Shank Tark. What is that?
Shark Tank, but the words are reversed.
I know. I'm asking why.
That's
why are you playing that game specifically with the television reality series Shark Tank?
That's an old callback to one of the very first podcasts I ever listened to, which you have no context of. It just makes me laugh internally. But stop shaking that around. Can we tell people what we're doing today? Because this is not only is this a different episode of Sight and Sound. Probably different than a lot of people are hearing, I'm assuming, but it's also just the vibe in general is much, much different of us even recording this episode. Tell people what we're doing, because I'm not even sure exactly what we're doing.
There's a few reasons why the podcast will be the way it is today. We have this thing. We've only done it once. We have this thing on our podcast feed called an after party.
There's actually been two, but you and I have only done one.
Right.
I did one with Luke as well.
Right. So, okay, sorry, excuse me. We've had two after.
Don't ever let it happen again.
We've had two after parties posted on the podcast feed. We're calling this an after party. After party is basically just any discussion Jay and I want to have with each other, and you guys just get to listen to it, essentially. There's a few reasons why we want to do it.
It's also the first week we're going to skip Sight and Sound Weekly.
Yeah.
Ever.
In my opinion, even though someone in the comment section will probably correct me, I think it's a slow week. Like, we could easily talk about Wonder Woman, but we talked about Wonder Woman last week. I know we'll probably get around to a couple things that happened, but we're not going to dedicate the 10 to 20 minutes on each topic. Jay and I are going to talk. And that's literally what it's going to be about. It might be about our lives, our personal lives. It might be about, like I said, the pop culture stuff. But it's going to be relaxed. It'll probably be even more condensed. I don't know how long you want to go. But
this is going to be... So we're very aware that our audience extends far past the SK Plus crowd, all that stuff. That's cool. But for you guys who listen to this every week, this is going to be a lot different than what you've heard in the past. But it's sort of like a mashup of everything that exists on that channel. The Wanger Show, a show about nothing. We might get deep. We might cry on this episode. You never know.
Diehard Schmo SK Plus fans that listen to us that way might think or consider this a response to what we got in the comment section this past week.
This also might be the episode that Christian finally fires us from SK Plus.
I don't know if we need to have this conversation here. Maybe I need to save it for after Schmo. For those of you who don't know, Sight and Sound is part of the Schmoes Know podcast family on their YouTube channel. So we do have a lot of spillover from the Schmoes Know fans called Schmoville. And Jay and I do this after show for the live show. And people don't like that we ramble. I kind of see their point, but they also have problems with the structure of the show, which I'm not compromising on.
Right.
But anyway, I just think it's kind of funny that out of spite, we're going to change it up and just do nothing but ramble on this episode.
I actually didn't want to jump into that right from the get-go.
Let's just not even talk about it.
Okay, that's fair. I mean,
we had a good thing talking about Raven's flock.
Look, I mean,
an Enterprise rent-a-car.
Well, I mean, I think it's funny because it's easy to sometimes just focus on the stuff that goes on in Schmoville and the SK Plus side of things. And I'll be honest with you, I've been guilty of, and I think I realized it when I started paying attention to my music episode that I do. And it's like that I have so much fun doing that episode, and I would call it just a labor of love if we weren't getting plays on it and stuff. But we have a huge, not a huge, an audience for it. And I appreciate that. And it sort of stands on its own, so to speak. I mean, the leftover stuff, it has the distribution of TV time, and Sight and Sound Weekly has the distribution of SK Plus, and to have that show sort of stand on its own and people come every week to listen to me just ramble on by myself, talk about music, that is what it is. You bit on my clickbait title this week. You listened to your first episode in a very long time of Sight and Sound Music. Why did you choose to listen to the episode?
Because
Is it because I uploaded the video podcast?
No. Actually, I did have to go in and change the title.
Of course.
But yeah, no, it was because I needed the material. when we actually do our after party. Jay and I have had this idea of doing after parties where I interview you and then another episode of you interviewing me about our lives and stuff. Because there's a lot of things I don't know about your life before me.
That's why I did that episode.
Yeah.
I stopped and I was just like, people probably don't know a lot about us.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I was laughing at you.
Yeah.
Through a lot of that episode because there were so many things that you said that sounded so melodramatic.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're like the least dramatic person that I know. So I couldn't
like to repress my emotions.
I couldn't help but laugh at some of the things that you said, and they were dead serious things, but I just laughed anyway.
No, it's fine. I totally get it. I repress a lot of my emotions. I don't like to let them show, but nonetheless,
it shows weakness.
I appreciate you tuning in to the show. For those that don't know, I do a music show every single Friday. We talk about the new releases that have come out, and that's like the first 30 minutes. Second 30 minutes is me basically just deep diving on a topic. So
I'm going to be totally transparent right here, right now.
Transparency.
I think if people, not just the people in Schmoville, but the people in general, if they are wondering or don't have an idea of the way that Sight and Sound is designed, my aunt, I had a conversation with her previously this week, and she was sort of asking me questions about the brand and what we do.
Love it.
And I realized how genius it is because,
can we rephrase it so it doesn't sound like we're patting ourselves on the back too much? How about we did a good job? Okay, we did a good job of planning it.
Let me explain it.
Okay.
I feel like I'm clipping. Do you want to turn me down?
Okay, go for it.
I'm barely, Jay. Barely. I think that what's great about the setup of the show is that obviously it's a holy trinity, the things that we know the most about, but it's also genius in the way that it can be distributed the way it is. Like the movie, even though, the movie portion isn't distributed on Schmoes now because I'm lacking, but we'll get there. The fact that the TV part can be distributed on an app. One day, hopefully, the music portion will be distributed in some way.
Yep.
And I mean that's simply genius. And I've talked about it before, and maybe I will talk about it because I might have another project coming out soon. But basically, when it comes to podcasting, I don't know what word I was going with there. When it comes to podcasting, people drive me nuts because it is such a thick. What word do I want? Thick. Environment. There's a lot of things.
It's oversaturated.
That.
Oversituated.
Yeah. People have got to get creative.
Oh, 100%.
Like, and I'm guilty of this because this is what Film Beef was, but I had a ton of fun on Film Beef. But Film Beef was never going to get any bigger than what it already was because it was another movie review podcast.
It was an echo of a lot of other things that existed. Yeah.
Like it was built the exact same way. I mean, the structure of it was exactly what the Slash Filmcast is. That's where I got the idea of the platform. And we started introducing TV recaps or whatever, but TV recaps, if it's on a movie podcast, TV recaps are hidden.
Right.
Because if someone is looking for a Leftovers podcast, they're not going to find it on Sight and Sound unless they're distributed on the TV Time app.
That's right.
So,
well, sort of. You can also search, depending on what.
Maybe if they found it on YouTube.
Depending on what platform you use. So one thing that I like to do, this is just a pro tip for people out there who really enjoy podcasts. If you go, even if you don't use iTunes, utilize iTunes search engine functionality. Go there and just search for a word. Like, for instance, when I was starting to prep to be on After Schmo, I searched Christian Harloff, and it brought up like a huge list of podcasts that had his name somewhere, whether it's in the description. You can actually go to a tab that says episodes and then sort, and you basically just go to everyone that's not Schmoes related or whatever. Yeah. But anyways, if you were to search for Leftovers in there, I mean, our podcast would come up.
Okay. Well, I know what you're saying, but and go back on the point where you didn't want it to sound like we were patting each other on the back. I think what I'm really saying is that I feel lucky.
Yeah.
I guess that it seems to be working out as well as it is. And I'm thankful. So that's what I'm getting at. But So getting to sort of explain what I do to my aunt in that way and sort of having that realization as to what's really going on, it was just it was a cool conversation.
It's also important to take a step back and also realize that that we've been very fortunate so far in everything that we've done. Like, for instance, this podcast has only been in existence for about 7 months now, and we've gotten a lot of stuff done, and that's great. And we've gotten a lot of really crazy and great opportunities. At some point, those opportunities aren't going to be coming up as frequently as they have been. And just because a few months after that fact might not be as successful as something else doesn't necessarily mean that we step back and be like, man, the podcast is struggling. It's like, we're not going to get an opportunity like TV Time or Schmoes Know every single month. And just to go back on that conversation that we had with some of the people in the Schmoville thing, I know we don't want to spend time on it, but one of the weird thing, I don't know if it was just the way the message was written initially or just the way it came across, but it came across almost, well, people reacted to it almost as if like the podcast itself needed help or whatever. And this is the most successful podcast I've ever been involved with, hands down, with the exception of After Schmo. I mean, After Schmo is its own thing, but just in general, the amount of content that we put out, the quality of stuff that we put out, and the way it's structured, it's doing great and it's doing fantastic. And obviously it can be better. And yeah, I think we're really happy. That whole thing was just to figure out how we could best take advantage of our opportunity.
Well said, Jay.
Let's go back to why we are doing this.
Another reason why I think we're doing this is because we're actually recording right before you and I watched the Leftovers finale. What ended up happening tonight was that I got off work, drove all the way here without bringing my mic.
Whose mic?
Your mic.
That's right.
And
I lent you my microphone.
And we had to drive all the way back to my house. And so it got later and later. I think the Leftovers is actually on right now. And we're missing it because we're recording this. But it was that time. But it was also the fact that I don't know, are the topics slow? Like, that's what I said. I think people might correct me on that.
So just in general, this is the latest that we've ever done Sight and Sound Weekly, I think. I could be wrong. We might have done one.
I don't know about that.
So, well, it just feels that way. But regardless, this week for pop culture, I think there was a lot of stuff that came out, but not a lot of stuff that I think in most other weeks you could look at this week and be like, no, we'll move that to the side. At least for music, the big story of this week was New Music Friday was crazy. There was a lot of stuff that came out that people didn't really expect to come out, but there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's like us doing an entire segment on a teaser trailer. It's like you can't really, I just don't want to do stuff like.
It depends on the teaser trailer.
Well, that's true, but like we did a segment the other week on the Gifted trailer. Like, there's just not a whole lot to talk about with that. But regardless, it doesn't matter. It's also a Sunday night. And I'm on a little bit of a staycation, not a little bit of one. I am on a full-on staycation. Now, you know a thing or two about a staycation.
I love staycations.
You rarely travel. When you do take a vacation from your work, you just hang out at home. Is that correct?
Yeah, I love it.
So my staycation is similar in the sense where I'm not going anywhere. I am staying here, but my girlfriend and I, we never get time off together. Like our schedules are to the point where we never have one specific day of the week where both of us are off for a full day. So we're really taking advantage of that. I don't know if our listeners know, I'm a little bit of a foodie. Would you consider me a foodie?
Yes.
I like to eat interesting foods. That's, I've been going to some nice restaurants.
Yeah. How often do you stop by Burger King?
No, that's actually an interesting question because I hate having to go to fast food, but I actually do it not frequently where it's like you go all the time. But
you always make me feel pretty bad about myself when I go eat fast food, and because I eat fast food at least once a day.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't eat it once a day, but there are times during the week where I only get 30 minutes for lunch at my job, which sucks. I know it's trash.
Wow.
Yeah. I also work 9 hours every single day.
I still get 30
minutes.
15-minute breaks and an hour lunch.
I mean, I get 15-minute breaks, but I don't ever take them. Anyways, so it's always like a thing. I always have to come home to let my dog out. And so by that time, I
don't have to do it.
have 15 minutes of lunch left. And I try to go to our Kroger, our grocery store, and make a salad at our salad bar to be healthy. But sometimes I just don't have enough time and I have to drive through a drive-through and pick something up. And I feel like shit every single time I do it.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I hate it. I mean,
I feel like it's like beat the clock every time I'm on lunch because I live on the opposite side of town than where I work, but I have nowhere to go. I'm not going to stay in the break room. Come on.
Right.
Sit there, listen to old people talk about the weather. Get out of here. So I have to.
Okay.
I have to leave.
You have way more food options than I do too.
Yeah, I have to drive across town. That takes 5 to 10 minutes. I have to sit in the drive-through, which takes 5 to 10 minutes, and then another 5 to 10 minutes to get back. Half of my lunch is spent getting lunch.
Yeah.
And so then I'm just sit at my house. I drive all the way across town to sit at my house for 30 minutes, and then I drive all the way back. And it sucks.
Yeah.
Because I recently moved. That wasn't always the case. And I haven't figured out another solution. I guess if I wanted to, I could walk over to Kroger and grab a salad, grab some sushi and eat it in the break room, but that just sounds miserable to me. Plus, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable because I'm management at where I work. And so I feel like if I sit in the break room, then people can't enjoy themselves.
Right.
So, and I don't want that to be the case either. I don't want people like watching what they say around me.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Okay, so I'll just throw it out there, my whole feelings on fast food and why I partake sometimes and I don't like it. So I work a very, very, very sedentary job. I mean, I sit at a desk in front of a computer for 9 hours a day. I enjoy it because I like to make things on computer. I like to be creative. I like to do stuff like that. But my job does not lend itself to being particularly healthy. I mean, they say that sitting is the new smoking. That's like the tagline that people say.
Yeah.
And so that's the case. I also have a lot of shit that goes on outside of work, hence the podcast and YouTube channel and graphic design and all that stuff. Also making music from time to time, hashtag unplugged his Xbox. Like, just don't have time. Being super active and working out, like, I don't have time to do stuff like that. So here's the compromise that I made. I cannot afford to not eat decently healthy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
With all of those things working against me, I can't afford to just be like, I'll go grab a burger at McDonald's. I'll go grab this at Taco Bell. I can't afford to do that. Also, my body type in general, 6'3", about 215, 220. It's just like, it doesn't lend itself well to that. I have no issue with people going to fast food, but just for me personally, I can't afford to do it.
This isn't really a justification because I know that I shouldn't eat fast food, but I literally buy into the convenience aspect of it and the fact that it's just always available.
Absolutely.
And I'm taking the time to go to the grocery store every week. I do it every now and then, especially if I'm like doing like a juice fast or something. I'll go pick up some produce and set myself up. I picked up a watermelon. I've got some fresh watermelon in my refrigerator. I'm going to go to town on that on my days off. That'll be my staycation. But
I just realized we also have to get off this topic as quickly as possible because on our last after party, we titled it Healthy Eating at one point. So I'm sorry, continue your point.
No, but my job is me literally running around all the time.
Right.
And I think that's what's interesting about our jobs. Like, we have the exact opposite jobs. Like, you get to sit at a desk and you have, correct me, but you have rare human interaction at your job, right? Or at least with a select group of people.
I interact with the exact same people every single day.
Yeah. I don't. Because I manage about 30 to 40 people at a time. I manage more people than anyone in that store except the store manager.
Yeah.
Literally. It's me. It's the store manager who does like 200 people, and then I do 30 to 40, and then everyone else is, So
I'm sorry to interject. This is an interesting topic that I've heard that people. I've heard people discuss it on other podcasts, and I think it's super, super, super applicable. And the people that I hear talk about it aren't in this situation. So most people listening to this, including you and I, we both work full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Being a creative individual, somebody that is creative and, the only way we can be successful being creative is by essentially adding a second job.
Uh-huh.
We have to, in our free time, we have to have this other thing. How do you think people, the typical American 9-to-5 work schedule and whatnot, the sit at a desk, mindless job that you don't enjoy, do you think, what would you tell somebody who's struggling creatively right now, who wants to do something else, who wants to do more, and they just can't figure out how to do it because their job is weighing them down?
I'll say that I don't.
Welcome to Creative Control.
That's fine. All right. So, and feel free to ask me more about this because I'd love to actually explain it. I live with my mother.
Right.
I don't have a relationship.
Yep. You've never had a relationship since we've been friends. Even years gone past, I've never known Ryan Snelling.
Like, I haven't had a girlfriend.
This is also another topic
I haven't had a girlfriend, like someone I'd call a girlfriend, since like 8th grade.
Dolly is your girlfriend, my dog.
So I still pay for everything. I mean, I am in charge of my life, except I don't pay rent because I live at home.
Right.
But everything.
Your mom likes you living there.
My mom loves that I live there. Absolutely.
You guys get along very well.
That's not why I'm there per se, but I mean, I'm happy and I like living with her too. I like spending time with her.
It's practical.
I actually I don't get to see that much of her, honestly, because our work schedules are different. She takes care of my niece and nephew sometimes. She's got a boyfriend too.
Right.
So it's like, I see her just as much as if like I didn't live with her. Actually, to be perfectly honest, there's very rare times when we have actual hangout time. But to answer your question, just when that's my lifestyle. I work a full-time job, but I'm clear of everything else. I would tell someone that you literally got to cut some things out of your life.
100%.
And if you want to get into specifics, I don't know how I would do what we do with a girlfriend. You do.
Yeah.
And I'm baffled by it because I could never do it. I'm just being honest. I could never do it.
Well, the good side to that, the positive aspect is she's a creative individual too. She works a creative job. So that I've been in situations where that hasn't been the case, and that's very difficult.
And you're just playing on the computer to some people.
That's exactly right.
So
can't wait to make that a t-shirt.
Yeah. And then mailing it to that said girl.
You wanted me to mail our first TV time check to a picture.
Oh yeah, a copy of it. Yeah.
Okay. I can't tell that story again. Sorry guys. Ask me on like Twitter and I'll explain it.
So I guess to answer your question, that's the first thing I would look at if someone asked me that question. It's like, honestly, and I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I'm saying that as it stands right now, I'm teetering on the edge, Jay. You know how much, where are you going? You know how much my job wears me out, that I literally have to fight to get a moment of relaxation because I'm at a heightened state all the time.
Mental exhaustion is, I mean, look, I know there's people out there that probably work physical jobs and, all the credit to you because I'm not that individual. But mental exhaustion, dude, it's a real thing, man. I mean, especially when you work a job where you're problem solving things all the time inside your mind, I mean, biologically, the amount of serotonin dumps and refuels that you have to go through in a 9-hour day just to make sure that you're firing on all cylinders. I mean, that's a real thing.
And that's one reason why I take staycations.
Yeah.
It's because it's like, okay, finally I get to lay down. After 6 months of not laying down, I finally get to lay down. And that's why I appreciate that so much.
I said to Kayla today when we were out at a mall, I said, this might be the best vacation we've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you explained it to me earlier. It sounded great. But
sounds fantastic.
But like, even if I planned a vacation, that sounds like work to me. And it's like
I went on one trip with you, and it was
basically if I plan a vacation, not only is it a lot of work to plan a vacation and sort all that out, but I'm saying to myself, once I go to this other place, I'm booking an itinerary and I'm doing all of these things.
Yeah.
And it sounds stressful to me. Like a great vacation would be just to drive to Florida randomly, stay in an Airbnb, and that's all.
Right.
Because then that would be a vacation to me.
I used to be the type of guy, well, I guess I was the type of kid. My parents used to drag me to the beach with them.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. I was bored as shit sitting on the beach while they were just laying around. And I was like, this is stupid. I remember one year I brought my Dreamcast to the hotel with us. You remember the Dreamcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I played
it in Sears a lot.
NFL 2K in the hotel room while they were at the beach. And now, I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we started going back to the beach as a family. And I had these thoughts, and I was like, I'm not much of a beach guy. And I sat there like all day, and I was like, this is dope.
Yeah.
This is great.
It's awesome.
We had like the type of house, or it was a condo where you just take an elevator down and walk out of the beach, you're there.
You make fun of me a lot, but my friend Josh's wedding.
I get it.
I mean, it was in Dustin. It was beautiful. I hadn't been, and that was like the first time I'd left my town since I had this streak of anxiety and depression. So it was a really big deal for me to be out anyways, but it was just so relaxed and chill, and I was surrounded by my best friends, and it was amazing. And all we did was just hang out, and it was like one of the best times I've ever had in my life. But yeah, that's what sounds good to me. It's just getting a second to chill out.
Right.
Because on my days off from work, I'm doing nothing but thinking about you. What are we gonna do? What YouTube video is going up? On my days off, that's when we plan to record all of our material. We're recording 2 podcasts tonight because it's our downtime. And it's like, so even my downtime isn't my downtime. I love doing what we do for Sight and Sound,
right,
but it stacks up. And so that's why I'm ready for a staycation. But so anyway, to finally answer your question, I am without all of that extra quote unquote baggage that most people my age have. And I'm already teetering on the edge. So it's like, I don't even know how to give advice. I don't know how to answer your question except with get rid of your girlfriend. I mean, seriously.
I mean, to sort of tail off of what you were saying, you're right. The only real 100% advice, and I've said this before on when I used to do creative control, I said this on the podcast with Luke, sometimes it takes... I have this thing that I do where I have me sitting here right now, the physical me, but I have another Jay that keeps it real with myself, like inside my head, that tells me, dude, you are being lazy. You need to stop doing what you're doing. Get up off your ass. What you're doing isn't good enough. I say it all the time. Everything can always be a little bit better. You've got to have that conversation with, not you, but people have to have that conversations with themselves. Like if you're just sitting around sulking about your job, about how A, B, and C isn't working for you, be real with yourself. Are you doing every single thing that you possibly can to make that change? What changes are you making in your life to make that dream a reality? I mean, if you're doing those things and it's just not working out for you, then 100%. I feel it, man. I mean, yeah. We've both been there, but you just got to do it. As Nike said, just do it.
And the other thing,
Nike didn't say, not the god Nike, but
I might not be the best ambassador for pursuing your dreams as other people, because I'm sitting here thinking about what it would be like to do this. Like if I was to have the same mindset, but without you, because you can help me stay disciplined, you can help me stay motivated. If I didn't have that like-minded person, and we talked about that a lot, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, there's no way in hell I could keep myself on track.
Well, the other thing too is we hear it from time to time. People say all the time, man, you guys put out so much content. And when we're on other people's podcasts, they make the joke like, you guys are on a bunch of podcasts, YouTube videos, all this stuff. And they say that and they give compliments, and that's great. And I appreciate it. It feels good. But in the back of my mind, I'm always saying to myself, there's no other way to do it and be successful where we are. We are two guys living in Kentucky trying whatever Finstock said about having LA West Coast dreams or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm an East Coast guy with West Coast dreams, whatever he said. There's no other way to do it. You have to be putting out so much content if you want to get out of whatever small town you're living in. If you're that type of person. Now, if you're the type of individual that lives in a space with a ton of opportunities where creativity is thriving. I mean, if you're living in LA and you could walk next door and talk to somebody that's in a movie, that's completely different. But for the rest of us out in the rest of America, it's just not like that. I mean, you've got to find an extra gear to go into.
And we both know a lot of people in the state of California without actually having been there.
Oh, yeah.
We really do.
Oh, a ton. Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, and not even just like at Collider.
And the grind is
like,
real there too.
I've just met a lot of people. Yeah. Like one of the person that was voted most likely to be famous with myself in high school was on NBC's Strong competition last year.
She's the one that trains Brian Callen, right?
I don't know if she does anymore, but she used to train Brian Callen.
Who I listened to for Fighter and the Kid. Yeah, shout out. I forget which listener listens to Fighter and the Kid with us, but
yeah.
Sorry, brother.
Yeah. But yeah. And a couple other people that I met, like when I was friendly with Lexi Alexander, the director of Green Street Hooligans. I met, we have a mutual friend, a film student at Western Kentucky named Cam Carpenter. He's grinding out in LA right now and doing some really exciting things. So, but anyway, I've randomly met a ton of people in California. Joe Carnahan follows me on Twitter.
Absolutely. Mark Ellis.
I was talking aside from this rose,
right?
Yeah, Mark
but
Ellis.
I mean, it is interesting, and the grind's real out there. I mean, my best friend Michael, who I do in the Galaxy with,
he's moved there, or is moving there
to L.A.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he lives in California now.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, just meeting some of the people through him, like our buddy Sam Marcoux, who lives out there. I mean, just they're grinding too. It's just a different sort of vibe.
Green in California?
He is. He's actually in San Diego. He lived in Nevada to start out with. He's from Reno, I believe, and this guy that we're talking about is somebody. He's a YouTuber, a very big YouTuber in the vaping community, the electronic cigarette community, which is a niche. And I've never really talked about it on here.
It's just a thing.
I say it all the time. This is what's crazy about Nick Green, aka Grim Green. To 99% of people in the entire country, he's just some guy walking around with tattoos. But if the people within his niche meet him,
they freak out.
It's like somebody that's potentially he's changed their life. That's crazy. That is insane. And this is also a guy who worked a factory job up until about 3 years ago
because of YouTube
and his other things that he does within the vaping industry. Quit his job, moved to San Diego.
He's your flick pick.
To a certain extent, yeah. Much bigger than flick pick. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't know how many.
Flick pick, I don't know. I'll look it up. I guess he's more like a stuntman.
It just blew my mind that Nick, one day I looked and he had more Twitter followers than Killer Mike from Run the Jewels.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, not Twitter, Instagram followers. That's nuts to me. But anyway.
Flick pick's 244,000.
Yeah, I don't know what Grim Green is at, but regardless. Yeah, I don't know how we got on this topic, but should we talk about something pop culture related?
I was going to ask you about your favorite podcast. What podcast are you listening to right now?
Right now, specifically, obviously, Joe Rogan, as I always do. Here's the thing. Fighter and the Kid might have taken over Rogan. I
feel like you're more annoyed with Fighter and the Kid more than you are with Rogan.
I get annoyed with them, but I love listening to them because of how funny they are, their interactions with each other. And they do a podcast like we do in terms of it's just two guys every single episode sitting down, being friends, and they have these nuances about them that they play off of each other.
What percentage of the time do they have guests? Because
that's what I want to talk to you about.
You've shown me Rappaport before.
That's what I want to talk to you about.
Jeremy Piven.
I hate when they have guests on. I hate it with a passion. I I skip a lot of episodes with guests.
Really?
Because I love listening to episodes with just the two of them, because and I say it all the time about our podcast. Well, no, I'm sorry. I say it all the time to you and other people, is that I just hit my microphone. The stuff that we talk about is what gets people here, but I want people to fall in love with us. Like, I want people to laugh at the random jokes that we say. Like, if I say something is flourishing and you're like, what did he just say? That's something that you have to listen back to like episodes ago. It's a running joke sort of thing. And that's what I love about them. When they have a guest on, it ruins their interactions with each other. They have a different persona.
But what if they have someone like Frank Grillo, like a friend of theirs?
So, yeah.
Do they lose it then?
No. If it's a close friend that's sort of in their circle, it's fine. Like, for instance, Bert Kreischer, the comedian, was on there, who also comes from the Joe Rogan space. He actually sort of blew up because of Joe Rogan's podcast, being on there frequently.
Yeah.
And he was on there recently, so I listened to that. But like, if they have, I'm trying to remember who they had Stone Cold on one time.
No shit.
Didn't care. Well, he was. So Brendan Schaub, who is the fighter of The Fighter and the Kid, he has another podcast called The Big Brown Breakdown. It's just an MMA podcast. And he had Stone Cold on that, but I didn't listen to it.
Stone Cold has...
I also don't listen to his other podcast because it doesn't have Brian Callen on it.
Stone Cold has a podcast, obviously.
Does he?
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, it's been a thing.
That's pretty cool.
I've never listened to an episode, but what I'll do when I'm bored is I'll look it up and I'll read the episode descriptions in his voice, and it fucking kills me, because it'll be like,
that's awesome.
Because like, it'll just be lines like, next up, Jerry Lawler comes in and talks about that can of whoop ass he laid at the 99 SmackDown. And I'm just, it's just like sentence after sentence after sentence of gold.
Does he talk about wrestling stuff?
It's mainly wrestlers that are on it, but it's not all the time.
Is it like Joe Rogan for wrestlers?
I haven't listened to it.
Okay.
I'm just basing it
dry
off
mouth right now? You're licking your mouth like Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight.
Yeah, cotton mouth. My medicine gives it to me. But is that what I'm doing? Like Heath Ledger?
You're not, but it just...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So anyway, that's hilarious. Okay, so Fighter and the Kid, Joe Rogan.
The Watch from time to time, but the Watch pissed me off. Andy Greenwald pissed me off, and I'm not this guy. Especially as somebody that does a podcast, I'm not this guy that gets like offended by something.
Yeah.
And I was never offended by anything they said. Andy Greenwald, I love him, inspired this podcast. Their podcast inspired this podcast. He has been on this streak of I don't know the best way to describe it, where an elitist mentality.
Yeah.
For months now, and it's driven me crazy. Like, when I'm listening to them talk about Atlanta, which is something I'm into, I love it, and I'm totally fine with hearing opinions that disagree with me. But lately, it's just been about like the stupidest things, and his nonchalant approach, like when they talk about tentpole movies like Marvel superhero movies, which he had a hand in with Legion.
He's also known as a comic book lover. At least Chris Ryan, maybe a little bit more.
Both of them.
But they both know their comic book material.
Both of them. And he's just so like, has that same shitty approach about it, where it's just like, they're trash. Our culture doesn't need this right now. And I'm just like, fuck
Bill Maher
off.
went on a thing like that a couple weeks ago.
Off. I'm like, I don't even necessarily know if it's a dong mentality, like where they're not taking in that stuff. But
yeah,
once you've started that cycle of saying stuff like that, you're never going to overturn your opinion on it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, that's one of... Okay, so I have 3 strikes with The Watch.
Okay.
The first strike was that Andy just...
You've kind of given up a little bit.
I don't remember the last time I listened.
Okay.
At first, it was kind of getting really annoying that he just always has to make a joke. He is constantly thinking about, what can I say that's shitty funny? And by shitty funny, I mean, it's not laugh out loud funny, but he thinks it's funny, and that's why he's saying it.
Right.
And that's what he's doing.
It's almost like he's trying to make his co-host laugh.
And he never does.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that like because we know each other, when I'm being funny, you don't laugh at me. And when you're being funny, I don't laugh at you. But we might still think that each other's funny, but we're not taking the time to laugh
They do
at
have, for what it's worth, all of this aside, they do have really good takes on things.
But that was just sort of the first strike that annoyed me. The second strike was I hated how he handled Big Little Lies. And to completely go against everything you just said, I love that show, and it bothered me so much that he had a problem with it because I thought his take was silly.
Well, he had to come back around on it. You know that, right?
And they ended up coming back around on it, yeah. The third strike for me was when he talked to Lindelof a couple months ago about The Leftovers, and I just thought he was kind of shitty to him right on air when Lindelof was the guest, and I don't know, I just kind of thought he was a dick.
Lindelof was back on there as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just the other day to preview the finale.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things about the watch, actually this is completely side note. My first interaction ever with Andy Greenwald was that book he wrote about emo music in high school, randomly enough.
Yeah.
My second interaction with the watch, and this is one of the it was actually back when it was Grantland. One of the coolest things I think has ever happened. Well, sort of. He, as soon as Mr. Robot season 1 finished, which is great, had Sam Esmail on there to sort of, no pun intended, decode the season. Did the exact same thing for season 2, and season 2 was not well received.
Yeah,
not that it was terrible, but it was not.
A lot of fans fell off,
and he put Sam Esmail to the sword on that episode, and I thought it was great. I thought it was great how it was handled.
That's when Sam Esmail said he didn't believe in plot.
Did he say that?
Yeah.
Did he really?
He said he didn't believe in plot.
So when his name was brought up with Star Wars stuff, did you get scared at all?
Yes. That doesn't sound good to me. I don't want Sam Esmail writing the Obi-Wan movie.
For those that don't know and those that aren't familiar with Mr. Robot stuff, for what it's worth, season 2 of Mr. Robot, I don't think it's bad. I think it was poorly executed. It wasn't great for sure. The undertaking that he did, he wrote, directed, and filmed every single episode of that season.
Some people call that a little pretentious or self-indulgent.
I don't know. I mean, that's just having control over.
He doesn't need to do that.
He doesn't need to. It's having ultimate control and auteur over his own content. And that's fine and that's great. But that, more than anything, before that, I used to be like, give the creators, let them do what they want. The writers, don't hold them back. Sometimes you need to put the reins on people.
Game of Thrones, for example. So many Game of Thrones directors have moved on to doing film. Alan Taylor being probably the most famous one. Alan Taylor did Thor: The Dark World and Terminator. Jenny Smith. I'm not saying that they're great movies, but I mean, hey, Michelle McLaren also was up for Wonder Woman before Patty Jenkins. Someone like Damon Lindelof doesn't have any interest in directing his own material, yet his series is so well directed always, including Lost. To Jack Bender, who directed some of Lost key episodes, directed the Hodor episode.
Oh, really?
Of Game of Thrones.
Did not know that.
And he was attached to do another Bad Robot.
That's one thing I find myself not paying attention to sometimes, and I wish
directors?
I wish I did more. Like sometimes, like when I found out way after the fact that Ryan Johnson did the Fly episode of Breaking Bad and what's it called? Ozymandias, yeah.
But someone like Ryan Johnson came up in film, at least from what I know. I mean, I know that he worked with, was it him that worked with Chris Carter on X-Files?
Chris Carter, the receiver.
No, that's Vince Gilligan. I was thinking of Vince Gilligan.
Minnesota Vikings.
No. Anyway, my point was that like Ryan Johnson, from what I know, he started out in film and then guest directed Breaking Bad.
Right.
But someone like Michelle McLaren, as far as I know, started out in TV. So she directed some Breaking Bad episodes, and that's when she got the Game of Thrones job and almost got the Wonder Woman job. So someone like that is really interesting. But anyway, a lot of Game of Thrones directors are doing big things. So
just to go back to the podcast thing real quick, I'm trying to remember if there's any other podcasts that I want to wrap up talking about listening to, but if anybody, music wise, if anybody's interested in listening to music podcasts, they do it like maybe 4 or 5 times a year. But there's an incredible music podcast called The Music Nerds, and they have some of the best discussions about music I've ever heard, period. Like incredible music discussions. Also,
even better than the music discussions you have with yourself?
100%. I couldn't even, dude, I don't even know how to play the sport they play. Track Show, who are my buddies that are out of England. They have a really cool show over there that they do. And Song Exploder, I'm not big on NPR stuff, but Song Exploder is one of the coolest podcasts that exists. Are you familiar with Song Exploder?
You've told me about them, but I don't.
So
never listened.
What they do is their podcasts, they can be as long as 30 minutes. They can be as short as 15 minutes. All they do is they take one track, one song, and they have the people who wrote it, the band, the artists, they talk about it, but then they take the song and they literally break the song up instrument by instrument and isolate just those things so you can hear them. And they talk about like, oh, this bass line, and you hear the bass line from the song. One of my favorite episodes that they did Converge, the song Dark Horse from Converge.
Yeah.
Isolating those screamed vocals. It's like, it's nuts, man.
Awesome.
And they'll even talk about like, they'll show the vocals before they added, reverb and compressor to it, and then they'll do it afterwards, and it's crazy nuts.
That's dope.
It's such a cool show, but it takes forever for them to put them together. Obviously,
yeah,
they don't do them every week. It's like maybe once every 2 months. But
right. That's
what
dope.
podcasts do you listen to?
Well, I listen to Le Batard every day. The reason why that is, okay, you want me to be honest? That's
I actually I want to do Le Batard real quick, and then I want to give a take on sport talk radio. So go ahead.
Okay, so the reason why I got into Dan Le Batard, and this is a pathetic story. So my friend Phil, he wasn't really, like, when we were doing Film Beef, he didn't care to listen to Collider and stuff. So
Right.
It was one of those things where it's kind of what you were talking about with your music episode. You didn't have people to have that type of conversation with. So I couldn't talk to him about Collider, but he would always talk about Dan Le Batard. So I started listening to it to see what it was about. And so I had something to talk about. And, but yeah,
Can we tell my story the first time I ever listened to Dan Le Batard?
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead.
we'll talk about it.
Okay.
But so the more and more I listened to it, the more and more I fell in love with it. And for those of you who don't know, I used a lot of Le Batard's sensibilities, especially on After Schmo. But
The rants, the pauses, and
just a lot of it. Even silly things like the
Right.
way I introduce your notes segment. Like that's how he sets up things.
Yeah.
Very quickly to the point, but he'll set it up. He's very good at involving new listeners. I think he's conscious of new listeners every week, so he will quickly say, for those of you who don't know, we're the sports radio show that's against sports radio and that
Right.
kind of thing. And he'll set up Stu Gott's character in like one sentence. That way you get him and understand what they're doing. And so I like a lot of that. I'm not able to do that with us really, just because the way we're set up. But even like the Twitter poll I introduced because of him. So I fell in love with that show because Le Batard is the straight man and Stu Gotts is such a great character. And it's so laugh out loud and funny. I don't pay attention to sports a lot. I enjoy basketball, but I don't care about baseball, and we're in baseball season right now. I don't watch football, and they mainly talk about football year-round. But I find myself loving listening to it, even though I have no involvement.
Yeah.
So if anything, I can take away that they're keeping me updated on the things that are going on. But his whole motto is that he wants to talk to anybody that will be interesting. So if it's a slow sports radio day, they will talk to Kenny G about his album. And then they'll
Aaron
ask
Paul about the path.
And they'll ask Kenny G for his take on the Super Bowl, even though he doesn't care at all. And Le Batard is awesome. They talk to Ric Flair, they talked to Bryan Cranston just last week, and they have such interesting conversations that more often than not, it's mainly about anything else other than sports. And he takes a lot of pride in that. He's also sort of like he goes rogue. I mean, he doesn't fit under the ESPN umbrella, and he talks about how lucky he is that ESPN lets him do whatever he wants because he talks shit about everyone on ESPN, even though he's friends with them. Like, he just makes it very clear that he does not want to do what everyone else is doing. So anyway, the whole attitude, the production, I just fall in love with it. I think it's so great. And oftentimes it's nothing. And oftentimes it's a Seinfeld episode, and I appreciate that stuff too. So that's why I listen to that every day. I know you have something that you want to say about Dan Le Batard.
Well, it's not necessarily about Dan Le Batard. It's actually more about sports radio in general. But my first experience with Dan Le Batard was Aaron Paul did an interview on his show, and I thought to myself, this is a great time for me to dive into his show for something else that I'm interested in. And sight and sound, I need you guys to listen to me. It might have been the worst interview I've ever heard in my entire life. He made Aaron Paul uncomfortable.
Yes.
I think it wasn't Stu Gatz that did the interview.
It was Mike Ryan.
Mike Ryan did the interview as a character.
Well, he was being Mel Kiper,
right,
who's I believe a Fox Sports analyst,
which is absurd. And I'm sure as a listener to the show all the time, people probably thought it was absolutely hilarious. But
I was losing my mind.
I did not appreciate it whatsoever.
Losing it.
Especially, and again, this goes back to my point about sometimes the show's not for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't get the show. And
you don't get the show.
And a thing in business, it is far more expensive and far more costly to bring on a new customer than it is to keep around an existing customer.
Yeah.
So, for that, I can appreciate it. But my whole thing with sports radio that I think is fascinating, I was here on my staycation, actually my first meal of my staycation. I was eating lunch with my girlfriend, and they had ESPN on TV. It is, if this gives you any indication of where the future of just programming goes and where podcasting in general fits into the content, if you turn on ESPN most of the day, they're essentially doing podcasts on air.
Yes.
I mean, the show I was watching, I don't know what it was, but it was two guys sitting in a studio, and they have microphones in front of their face because they're doing a radio show.
Right.
And I just thought to myself, I was like, this is fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
Like on TV, ESPN, ESPN is one of the most pivotal television networks that has ever existed.
Yeah.
One thing that we studied in my media studies major was ESPN, and the fact that if it ever went completely a la carte, ESPN would hands down be the most expensive network.
Yeah.
100%. And the fact that that's what their content is right now, essentially podcasts on TV, crazy.
The thing about sports commentary in general, and this is an attitude that I've had for years before I even, like, when Le Batard was introduced to me, it wasn't introduced to me as the anti-sports show. So my attitude towards sports commentary for years, I hate press conferences. I hate post-game interviews because it's like, hey, what do you think happened tonight? We didn't score as many points.
Yeah.
And that's literally...
Right.
I can't stand it. I think it's
been a knock on sport.
And,
I mean, even as a soccer fan, like, people hate doing interviews with the athletes because they give these regurgitated interviews.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why I never got into sports as much as I did movies and television, because it was more interesting to watch movie stars on late night TV than it was to watch athletes do anything.
Well,
except play the game.
Absolutely. Any fandom, sports, music, movies, television, anything requires you to go a level deeper beyond whatever you're seeing on TV.
Yeah.
It requires you to find the stories beyond the stories, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's one reason why I love soccer so much. Soccer only has 2 months in the entire year where they don't play. And sometimes in those 2 months, they still play. There's always drama behind the scenes, and it goes like that for any sport. But
anyway, Le Batard exploits that, and that's why he takes care of the type of guests he has on. But anyway, I think
it is hot as shit in this office right now.
It's okay.
I'm just saying. Sorry, I had to throw it out there. Hashtag transparency.
It's okay. But what was I going to say? Oh, the Aaron Paul interview is terrible. So, and the reason why I'm saying that is
unapologetically so. Yeah.
I'm saying that I agree with you, but I loved it,
right?
Because I've had so much context for it if you listen to the Bryan Cranston interview that they did, I guarantee your attitude would change.
Right.
Because it was a lot more, they enjoyed each other a lot. There was this whole bit that they had all week that they were asking people if they were in the Mile High Club. And so Bryan Cranston talked about being in the Mile High Club, which was funny. And
Mile High Club, for those who don't know, is if you had sex on an airplane, essentially.
Which they asked Tony Dungy, the former coach of the Indianapolis Colts.
The priest, Tony Dungy.
Yeah. They were talking about, they were scared to death. They were like, Tony Dungy's going to be on in a minute. Are we going to do the Mile High Club thing? And you heard them debate it. And then Stugotz was like, we should probably just ask if he even knows what it is.
Yeah.
So sure enough, he didn't know what it was when they asked. But anyway, all I'm saying is I think that I'm waiting for the perfect segment to pop up so I can say, Jay, go to this time.
Right. And any podcast that exists or radio show or anything like that, you know, they shouldn't spend time trying to re-educate new listeners. I mean, and that has a good side and a bad side.
Well, my point was he's good at one sentence. Here's a quick explanation.
Right.
They don't. It's not at the beginning of every show. It's not the beginning of every segment. But it's something that you can pick up on regardless. If you're a new listener or not, whether he explains it to you or not, you can pick up on it. We're talking too much about Dan Le Batard. But anyway, I love Geek History Lesson.
Okay.
I don't listen to it a lot, but I think the idea is so clever. I think it's so smart.
The Jason Inman show?
Jason Inman and his wife, Ashley Victoria Robinson. The shtick is that they're professors and they educate you on one character or concept in comic book culture. And so they always theme it around. Well, they don't always, but usually they theme it around what movies coming out, and they'll talk about obscure comic books. And they're both really smart, educated comic book nerds. They're comic book writers. Ashley V. Robinson writes for DC Comics, which is a gig I think they got recently because they're like us. They grind, they hustle for what they want. And it's been kind of fascinating to watch his career. I've been following him for a couple of years, and he brings her on, and she does just as much as him as well. And they're creating another comic book. That's not really what they talk about on the show, but I just really appreciate that because it feels grassroots. Nerdist, again, kind of going back to what we talked about. For me, it's always been more fascinating to listen to a movie star celebrity or a TV star celebrity. And so like I really dig something like Nerdist,
right?
Where I get to listen to those people talk and chat. Yeah, I think, I don't know, off the top of my head, I think those are the main podcasts that I listen to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's good to listen to a variety of stuff, and I think a lot of that discussion was sort of spurred on by the question that we had on After Schmo, just being, do people listen to more podcasts?
I should have given a shout out to Happy Sad Confused, which is essentially Nerdist, but Josh Horowitz, and my boy Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah,
I've been listening to a lot of him recently. So absolutely,
Adventures in Design is another one that I listen to as well for more like business savvy type of stuff, hosted by Mark Brickey. It's not a graphic design podcast. It's I don't know, just look it up. Anyways, let's sort of wind this down. Now, one thing that we've barely talked about hardly at all, and I just for the sake of doing it because we're here in Sight and Sound, just a little bit of music talk here. I am in the, what is that? Oh, Bill Maher as well. You also listen to Bill Maher? We're not going to talk about that right now because it's hot as hell. I have to pee, and this is going longer than I expected.
Who the hell is here? Someone walked in like 10 minutes ago.
Oh, I have no idea.
You didn't know that?
No.
Anyway.
I think she's just on the phone, but regardless.
I heard somebody walk in.
Regardless. Yeah, music-wise, look, I just got to say this. So I kind of mentioned it on another episode or on another weekly, I think, but this year for me, I have been on the craziest rock music binge lately.
Yeah?
I mean, for the last probably 2 or 3 years, I've been just diving deep in hip hop, rap, R&B, because it's an interesting music genre. But why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing at what you said. It is an interesting music genre.
For sure. And I mean, I think that rock music in general has been a little bit stale. But I mean, it has been. Was that in reference to me, or was that in reference to general rap music?
I was your hype man there.
Okay,
gotcha. I was confused. So
But for whatever reason, this year, I feel like the heat meter, it's starting to warm up. I think it has to do with the fact that going to see Balance and Composure was a big thing.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with there's a lot of albums that are coming out, that are about to come out, that I'm getting really, really excited for, and new bands coming out as well. And I don't know, man. I'm just sort of getting a little bit excited about it. I never asked you. Well, I think I might have asked you, but I kind of do want to get your thoughts. The new Balance and Composure EP / 7-inch that dropped, we heard one of those songs live, and you were really high on it. I just did a review on our YouTube channel of that 7-inch.
I saw.
What'd you think of it?
Enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just on par with Light We Made, and you said how it just kind of felt like it was the B-sides. Isn't that what you said? You felt like it was B-sides of it?
I don't know what that album is or what that project is. I don't know if those were just leftover songs, or if I know for a fact one of them for sure is.
Yeah.
Or if the other two were new.
That's exactly what it felt like. It just felt like we got more Light We Made, which you and I talked about it a couple weeks ago, how much we were already with the album, but over time we have progressively gotten more and more into that album.
Seeing it perform, I said this in my video, but seeing it live completely re-energized me on that album.
Right. It was sort of like what happened was the waiter hands you this dish, and you're like, this isn't what I ordered. That was my attitude when I first heard that album, but I took a bite anyway. Because my mom was forcing me to.
Okay.
And I realized that
Am I your mom in this situation?
Yeah. And then I realized it wasn't so bad. And then I realized there's another course. And so like this is the cherry on top, where like I was finally feeling complete and full, and then I get the added bonus at the end. And that's sort of been my attitude with this with the B-sides. Or the quote unquote B-sides, this EP. So
well, I went so far to say in my video, I think they're some of the best songs they've ever written. Just because, here's the thing, I think song structure wise, a lot more straightforward, very verse chorus, and the electronic elements and the rock elements that they're experimented on. Which Light We Made is sitting here looking at us right now on my shelf.
Yes, she is.
They were sort of experimenting on that album. It felt to me, again, they could be B-side. They could have written these at the exact same time, but this felt like the perfect balance. You know how when you're making a dish for the first time, making a dish for the first time, adding the spices, and you eat it, and you're like, this is good, but I could have equaled out the spices a little bit more.
If the dish is pizza rolls, then yes.
Okay. But then when you go back, you know how to make it just the perfect way. That's what I felt like we got on this.
By not preheating the oven. Just put them right in, let it cook with the oven.
I'm going to ask you this question about it, and then this is where we can end. But I said this in my video. Let me know if you agree with this statement. I think if you are going to dive into Balance and Composure for the first time, this could be one of the best spots to go into.
Oh, the EP.
The three songs.
I don't have a problem with that. I thought I was going to get scared and say Light We Made, which I don't know if I wouldn't still suggest it to this
Slow
day.
Heart EP.
Yeah. What do you have to lose?
I think it's the most straightforward thing. And because it is the most recent thing too, you're getting where they are now. And like if you dove into Separation and then you were like, I'm going to go from like the first 3 songs on Separation straight to Light We Made, you might be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. But it's funny. I mean, I agree, but I still think my 2 favorite songs are from their very first album. So
I can believe that.
I
can agree with that. Yeah. But yeah, you guys check it out. I mean, we've been pushing this band hard, and I'm also really, really excited because I just found out the other day that another band that I'm obsessed with, Pianos Become the Teeth, who their last album was mind-blowing. They're a band that like are completely off social media essentially, so I have no idea what they're doing. Just found out that they're in the studio recording with Will Yip, who recorded Light We Made.
Will Yip sounds like a
Will Yip.
I was gonna say he sounds like a yes man.
No. Will Yip.
I thought you were going to say you were excited that Balance was coming to Covington.
I am excited about that.
Which hopefully we'll get a chance to chat with them. Maybe
gonna reach out.
Maybe YouTube video, maybe a podcast.
We'll reach out. We'll figure something out. But look, I think we've rambled
We didn't even talk about what we said we were going to talk about.
That's good. That's why after parties are great. Speaking of after parties, the theme song you heard at the front of this, that's a remix
It
version.
Samples After Party.
Yeah,
by
from
Balance and
Balance and Composure. So, yeah. Look, guys, it's hot as hell in this. My stomach is cramping now. I don't know why.
But
I feel like, I don't know, something's going on.
let's get you a LaCroix.
All right. I don't know if I have any.
We'll take a look.
Guys, you can find us on social media at Sight Sound Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Go to our Facebook page, like it if you want to do that. We also have a YouTube channel. Just search for us or go to the link in the description box of this podcast. Hit the subscribe button for more content, sort of similar to this. Not really, but you can do that. Doing a lot of cool stuff over there. You can find me at Jaye Williams, J to the A to the Y to the E on Twitter and Instagram is the same for both. Ryan, where can they find you?
You can find me on Sight and Sound Movies, which those episodes will be picking up very soon. I've got the episode with Ellis on standby. I'm going to get some more guests. I
listened to it.
You did?
I did. I forgot to tell you.
We'll talk about it after the show. I have more guests that I'm lining up. Some people you know, some people you may not know. And I've got some other ideas brewing for the episodes. I think I'm finally going to tackle it the way that you tackle your music episodes. We'll talk more about that later too.
Amazing.
And
listens to Sight and Sound music one time, gets inspired by the content I've been doing for 7 months.
Right. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell and buy Sight and Sound shirts. We are literally hanging up this podcast and going to watch the Leftovers finale, even though our Leftovers finale podcast will be posted prior to this. So yeah, as soon as we we'll be getting ready for the end. As soon as we hit stop here, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, not sure what we're talking about next, but we got to figure that out in terms of TV stuff. But we do have a Game of Thrones podcast on the horizon. If you guys don't already have that podcast needs satiated, you can hang out with us here and do that. Sightsoundpod.com to get your Sight and Sound t-shirts. Go ahead and buy them. We've got new shirts coming on the way very, very soon. Be on the lookout for that. I also do my music show every single Friday. I forgot to plug that. Yeah, that's it. Guys, if this is your first time listening to an after party, just a reminder, we don't do these all the time. We just do them kind of every now and then when we're feeling like it. But if you enjoyed it, there'll be more down the pipe, maybe back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. You got anything else?
No.
All right, let's get out of here. We'll see you guys later.